the team, do different setup solutions, try different things, and especially for those teams who don't have much sim experience in their background, I think that's been incredibly crucial to kind of treat it as they would have treated Le Mans, as though they had Le Mans as an open track for weeks and weeks and weeks on end before. What a dream that would be.
I know, and of course that's physically impossible. Most of the year it's a road, and so nobody gets that amount of time. Now, we've talked about the various different teams, we've talked about our GT field, including the likes of Porsche, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and 1966 Ford versus Ferrari. From the 1950s, Ferrari's been a huge part of the Le Mans 24 Hours, and they're back, and their team is largely based in Maranello. They've cleared part of the Ferrari Museum and made a purpose-built area, and Haley has a little bit more with the guys in Maranello.
That's right, as you can see just behind me, this is the Ferrari hub in Maranello in Italy, and I'll be speaking in just a second to Alberto Borghini, who will be our contact over the course of this 24 Hours Le Mans, who's going to tell us a bit about, what the preparations, how they're going. I think he's setting up his webcam as we speak. Alberto, can you hear me? Yep. Is that a thumbs up for a yes? Can you hear me? How are preparations going there? Well, as you can see, they've got their sim set up, so they'll be busy qualifying right now. And as I say, we're going to be speaking to Alberto, who'll be our contact over the course of these 24 Hours Le Mans. As you can see, there's Charles Leclerc and some of the other drivers. Well, I imagine they're kind of lockers because they've been spending hours and hours on end here.
normal teammates are now racing against each other, dotted around in the various different fields. So assuming that they normally race in the same big room in a house or in a, you know, in a warehouse or an industrial unit or whatever, wherever they normally are based, how are they then going to divide that up and not talk to each other about what's going on and the setup and all of that? They've got to be, you know, ultra professional about separating themselves from each other.
There will be sort of like a mix of both, because you know, as a brand, as Coanda working with Porsche, there's a lot of pressure on Coanda's shoulders, because they've been brought along to be like, we need your best guys, and they've got 4 cars, and they have brought 8 of their best drivers in the world to come and take part in this. And so I kind of think like there is still a bit of like 50-50 on they'll be working together, like on sort of like, oh, what have you found on setup? Oh, you've done this, you've done that. And then even in the race, I don't expect you'll see them fighting too hard. Same as it would be in the real world. You know, you're not going to get like a lot of teams fighting hard when they could potentially you know, work together to a better point.
So for the Coanda guys, as long as a Porsche wins in GT, they're all winners.
Precisely. Almost to a sense of like, you know, if it comes to that final hour, they're all 4 in line, there's no one else nearby, have a go.
All right.
But outside of that, no risk.
Now, you've touched on a couple of famous names, a couple of famous teams, but the entry list is truly spellbinding, from famous names from across the globe of endurance racing and sprint racing, including 5 current Formula One drivers and plenty of Le Mans winners. So here is just a taster of some of the people taking part in this Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual.
Sebastian Buemi, Max Verstappen, Andre Loderer, Brandon Hartley, Juan Pablo Montoya, Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, Simon Pagenaud, Ruben Barrichello, Kamui Kobayashi, Bruno Senna, John-Eric Verne, Pierre Gasly, Neil Johnny, Norman Nato, Stoffel Van Dorn, Nicolas Lapierre, Darren Turner, Will Stevens, Andy Prio, Catherine Legge, Robert Wickens, Felipe Massa, Nick Tandy, Paul Lushatin, Antonio Felix da Costa, Felipe Albuquerque, Nicky Katzberg, Jan Magnussen, Tommy Milner, Pietro Fittipaldi, Tomas Laurent, Jose Maria Lopez, Antonio Giovinazzi, Charles Leclerc, and so many others. A grid of champions for one legendary E-race. Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual.
Sim world, but there's plenty. We could do the same thing with all the sim drivers that we've got involved as well. It's truly the best entry we've ever seen in sim racing in the virtual world. Now, we were having a quick look at the behind the scenes of Ferrari. Haley, I think, has got a better connection now. So back to you, Haley, with Alberto.
Connection with Alberto Borghini, who should be ready to talk in just a second. He is live from Maranello. It's the Ferrari hub, as you can see. Oh, Alberto, how's everything going?
As well.
I can hear you fine. Very well, thank you.
Tell us for the qualifying.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for participating. So can you just give us a bit of insight into the preparations, how everything has been going for you there in Maranello?
Just got the briefing. I show you the virtual garage where our engineers are working now and ready to start testing with the qualifying. So everybody's there. The first drivers are on site and the others waiting behind the scenes. This is going to be your special view here at Maranello. We are at the Museo Ferrari, so we will try to show you during the race also our fantastic museum. This is a wonderful place for the wonderful virtual 24 hours.
And what a wonderful place to have a hub in the Ferrari Museum. So Alberto, we'll be talking to you over the course of the weekend. Thank you very much for this virtual view of the garage. I'm sure, well, as you can say, I'm not sure if you are continuing to talk there, but so here obviously we have the sim room. Alberto?
This is the sim room, I confirm, where we have the 6 simulators, yes.
Okay, you have 6 simulators.
4 hours, starting now with the qualifying, yeah.
Great, we can't wait to see you guys after this qualifiers, of course, in this 24 Hours of Le Mans. Thank you very much, Alberto. Back to you, Ben.
Thanks very much. We're into qualifying now. The clock is started and all the cars will have to come out the pits. They have to go back into the pits. They cannot escape out of this session, and therefore not a lot of time to get that perfect lap in. Martin Haven will lead you through it.
Absolutely right, and perfect conditions. It's clear, it's dry, there's been no rain, the track is very green though, so it's not as if we've had 2 or 3 days already of free practice and several hours for the track to rubber up. So the drivers are going to find that the track will change. Now, the car you're looking at the moment is the Gulf Racing car, which especially for this weekend has sponsorship from Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club, Wolves on the side of the car. So a unique livery, we've never seen that before, and there are a lot of them in this field that we have not seen before now. We talked about Porsche having special liveries on all their 4 cars. They're all a mixture of red and white and black, Porsche's colours. And the red and white is significant because 50 years ago, the 917 in red and white colours won Le Mans, and they're celebrating that. That's the reason that red and white is big in their field. So cars on their outlap. You don't have to qualify with the best of 2 driver laps. You can keep the same driver in all the way through. It is the single fastest lap that will take pole position in the class. But you can see on the top left of your screen, the clock is counting down from 20 minutes. That's all you've got. So if the setup's not right now, Lewis, then you're going to be a long way back on the grid, right?
Yeah, you can only do so much to overdrive the car at this point. I think this is Matteo Caruso that we're on board with, driver of one of the Ferraris. Obviously, there is a stacked grid out here. We've got in qualifying, you're not limited to just having your pro driver. You can have your sim driver, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the top sim drivers in the car, because they're the ones that are going to be pushing to the limit. And in this field, it is absolutely stacked. There are a few drivers on this grid that I'm definitely looking at for a potential pole position. Of course, we can only find out at the end of 20 minutes. The likes of Erhan Yovski, one of the greatest drivers on rFactor 2 and in sim racing in general. The Macedonian, incredible speed, driving the R8G esports team. Of course, that's the one with Romain Grosjean, backed by, or helped with rather, by AAA Esports, and they're a well-known sim racing team. They've got 3 drivers in this field, I think 3 or 4. There are so many strong drivers on this grid.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Ferrari 488 GTE. Up until this race, that car has not existed in rFactor 2. It has been designed specifically so that Ferrari could participate in this virtual Le Mans 24 hours. So nobody in the real world has raced this car yet. And for Ferrari, that's been a little bit of an issue because that puts so much pressure on their sim guys. They've got no knowledge of it going in. They're having to develop this car from the ground up, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're having to figure out, because obviously every car, naturally, with different cars in GTE, every car has its certain weaknesses and its certain advantages. And when you're being thrown into the biggest sim race on the planet ever, it's how do you take that and go, yeah, so I know you've raced some of the other cars in this class, but you want to take on a Ferrari for a bit. So is it quick on straights? Is it quick in corners? Where is it? And obviously there is a lot of work behind the scenes to try and figure out where the advantages of this car is and where they can take those advantages.
And they'll do what racing drivers do, Ben, when they change to a new car, is they'll try all the tricks that worked on the last one they worked on. Some of them will work, some of them won't have any effect at all. So you use what you know, and then you start stretching in different directions. And for the engineers in Maranello, as well as for the sim racing engineers, that's all a real learning experience.
Well, this is Kasper Stolic, who's just started his lap. That's the Ferrari we're watching, the 51 car that he will share with Perel and Nilsson. But curiously, the 52 car, which is, for me, the stronger car, with Charles Leclerc, Giovinazzi, Bonito and Tonizza, the 2 F1 esports drivers for Ferrari. Not out of the pits yet, the only car we've yet to see appear. So something going on there, and I'm surprised also not to see them running together, Chris? Because surely a slipstream is what you want down these long straights.
Yeah, well, when you've got 3 cars out there and you're all at the same base in Maranello, you'd think that they would have planned this to all go out together. Perhaps there's a little bit of a problem behind the scenes, but Ferrari have brought a very strong force to this. Qualifying is not very long, so you're only going to get minimal laps and minimal chances to get a good tow with each other down that Mulsanne straight. So yes, definitely surprised not to see them out together. That could be because there is a problem, or there is another story behind the scenes why Benito is still in the pits, maybe waiting for a little bit later in the session to come out and put his time in. Confidence perhaps, but I'd say more likely there's perhaps a very small problem going on there.
Looking at one of our 4 unique Porsche liveries for this race. This is the 91 car. This is the American driver Mitchell de Jong. And you can see even the background. I mean, you know, it's only what you'd expect from a full professional setup like Porsche. Even the background has been specifically made. All those panels that would normally in the garage, specifically made for this race to match that car. Mitchell de Jong, like most of the drivers in the session, a pro sim racer. At the moment he's racing in Porsche's Tag Heuer Super Cup, the $200,000 prize fund match race series. But Corvette Racing have got Nicky Katzberg and Tommy Milner, real world racers, out in their cars, and the only other real world racer who's out on track at the moment for Aston Martin Racing is Ross Gunn in the 98, which would normally be their Pro-Am class car. So there is a mix. Predominantly, we've got 16 or 17 pro sim racers out setting the times, but there are a few real world racers in there as well.
Yeah, and the Aston Martins actually spent about half a lap in the pits before going out on the track. So they're actually just finishing their first sector of the lap. Fastest car through the second sector so far is Joshua Rogers, the world champion in the Porsche Esports Super Cup. But Lewis, that is a different platform, and it's almost like jumping into a totally different car, isn't it? It's not the same car.
Absolutely, there are so many differences. Of course, those sat at home thinking, oh, it's a car, it's 4 wheels. No. There is so many differences between all of these different simulators and how they all work, and extracting the most from one. For example, I am absolutely rubbish at iRacing. I'm all right at R-Factor 2, but really, really bad at iRacing. And the thing is Josh Rogers is one who's done a little bit of R-Factor 2, not very much, but a little bit. He's taken part in the Formula E Race at Home Challenge. The thing that I will note about him, and me and Chris have been speaking about this a lot, is anything that he touches, he is quick.
Yep.
And he's just gone to the top of the timing screen. Not the fastest car in Sector 1. That was also a Porsche. That was Mitchell de Jong. But he's gone fastest in Sector 2 and Sector 3. So 3 minutes 47.4. And he's just set the fastest first sector on his next lap. Now, again, you know, this is all part of maybe some of the difference between real world and virtual world. Is he going to get another whole quicker lap out of those tyres? Is that edge still going to last in the virtual world that it might not in the real world? Has he got enough? Has he done enough to the setup to make it work? But at the moment, Josh Rogers, who's an Aussie but lives in Germany because that's where he races, so he's in a house share in Germany in the Rheinpfalz. And he's sharing with 3 other Porsche sim racers. And so you saw the backdrop there was a little different from Mitchell de Jong, who's in an entirely different place. So yeah, again, you know, they're racing the same team with each other week in, week out, and here at Le Mans, but they're dotted around the country. Now, most of the other Porsche drivers, the sim pros, are going to be in the same house, aren't they?
Yeah, but you know, despite the fact they are dotted around the world, believe it or not, they would have been practicing this 20 minutes over and over and over with different drivers in the car to see who is going to be the quickest drivers in each of those teams to go out and set our laps. Clearly, they have a lot of faith in Josh Rogers, and as Lewis said, he's quick in anything, is someone that you could put a question mark over given his R-Factor 2 experience, but at the moment, so far so good as he's just gone purple once again in Sector 1.
Yeah, Mitchell de Jong, second quickest for the Porsche Esports team. Third fastest, Jeremy Bouteloup, the Frenchman. Now, he is one of the youngest guys in the field. He's only 18 years old. We have a few teenagers as well. And this is one of the things that separates the virtual world from the real world, is that you can't race at Le Mans if you're 14 years old, except here you can. So that's another, and that's what, this is like the motor race equivalent of playing football in the park, except in the Premier Division or in the Europa League. You can start at any age, and if you're quick enough, it's an ultimate meritocracy. If you're quick, you can be 14 or 44, it doesn't matter.
I was going to, believe it or not, he's probably done 24 hours around this circuit several times before, perhaps more so than some of the professional drivers out there. And that experience, believe it or not, he might be one of the youngest, but he's probably had this experience more times than some of the older guys on the grid.
Now, Lewis, we've got a lot of pro racers who do nothing but race sims. He's got to go to school.
Absolutely.
So he immediately loses a huge block of the day that they'll be sitting there, they'll be doing their training, they'll be having their nutrition and all the other stuff, but they'll be on the sim. He's in, English and maths and geography and, no, seriously. So he's got a real, I mean, it's not a job, but he's got a real day that he can't avoid. So, if you're a 14-year-old gamer, then your life has a very different look to a pro gamer who's left school.
Well, the thing is that in sim racing, of course, everyone has time commitments, so it's all very different at the moment. As we are looking at Jordi Sveers there, he ran down to Maranello. Not quite ran. It's all the way from the Netherlands, but age is not a barrier in sim racing, and that is one of the biggest things about it, is that no matter how old you are, no matter how young, it doesn't matter. You don't have the physical aspect per se. You can play with some things. You still have to do quite a lot, but you're not being thrown around in the car. So from that sense, anyone can race it. You can be racing with 70, 80-year-olds. It doesn't matter. You can be like you have a 14-year-old team with a 78-year-old. It doesn't matter, and that is so beautiful to have that wall knocked down.
And Ben, of course, we saw that, didn't we, in IndyCar, where Mario Andretti went to Indianapolis as a rookie for the first time in over 50 years, because he's never raced sim race, and he went, yeah, okay, I'm in, I'll do it, whatever. So but 8 or 80 doesn't make any difference. You can race. So now then, we've just seen all the Porsches into the pits and back out again.
Yeah.
Guys, what are they doing?
Very curious, wasn't it? Josh Rogers actually was on a better lap, his second lap. Purple sector 1, purple sector 2, and then obviously their run plan was all come into the pits because they can now just about get one more lap in. With a fresh set of tyres, Chris?
Perhaps, like I said, this would have been something that they rehearsed. So that is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to go back out and give it another shot. They're in a very, very good position, so they have a chance to go out there and go even quicker to try and secure a potential front row in the GTE class. I definitely watch out for our HG Esports team. Yayovsky, as Lewis says, he's one of the big names in sim racing, one of the poster boys, if you like. So definitely watch out for him. He's in a good position at the moment. Likewise, Van Duren, Dempsey Proton on the run-up to this have looked very, very strong. But as you said, Porsche's all in, Ben.
Yayovsky 0.8 of a second back from Josh Rogers, who is 0.4 of a second faster than De Jong. Bouteloup 0.6 of a second back, and Leslie Sorensen in the first of the Aston Martins in 6th. We're still waiting for Enzo Benito. Did get out onto circuit in that Ferrari, albeit 9 minutes into the session, and he's actually in the second sector of the lap now. But at the moment, the Ferraris are languishing way down in 14th and 15th position. So qualifying not running well so far for them.
But again, Ben, as we all know, the only moment that anybody ever cares about is 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. It's nice to have the headlines, yada, yada, yada. It's much nicer to have the trophy. And I know everybody will surrender a pole if they think it gives them a better chance of getting that trophy. And the trophies here in the studio are exactly the same trophies, the replicas of the big trophy that every class-winning driver on the podium will get in the real Le Mans 24 Hours. And let's talk a little bit about the history factor here as well, as we see that everybody's sort of coming back out on their outlaps. Last year, or the last World Endurance Championship season, we had a unique situation where in one season of the championship there were 2 Le Mans 24 Hours. So the 3 Toyota drivers, Kamui Kobayashi, and Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Buemi, made history that nobody will ever make again. They won Le Mans twice in the same season, even if it was different calendar years. They won twice in the same season. And 2 of those 3 are racing here as well. So they could also win what is likely to be a unique event. With any luck and a following wind, hopefully by June next year, the world will be a much more normal place and Le Mans will resume in its normal position as a real race. So this race, and this is why the focus is on it from all these drivers and all these teams, this race has never ever happened before in history and most likely will never ever happen again in the way that it is. So it's a unique opportunity, and if you get one of those podium finishers trophies, either in LMP2 or in GTE, then that is something that nobody who follows in your footsteps will be able to do again. So it is a massive thing for everybody involved. Teams, drivers, everybody. And off into the gravel at the Ford chicane has gone the Feed Racing 99 car. So that's our the first off that we've seen from the Corvette.
Yeah, that's Petit aboard that car. And that's Martin's perspective from the real world. But Chris, in the sim world, is it also considered that this is kind of a moment in history that will never be repeated? Are the sim guys taking it in that form as well? Because obviously there's lots of sim races happening every single day of the week.
Yeah, it's a rare opportunity where all eyes are going to be on you and you're going to be racing with professional drivers and working with professional teams as well. And the bragging rights from winning this race are something that is going to be better than any trophy or any amount of money in the world to these guys.
Not many sim racers regularly will be in a 24-hour Le Mans race with Formula One Grand Prix, current Formula One Grand Prix drivers, with multiple world champions, multiple Le Mans winners. You know, it's for both sides of the divide, if you like, for the real and the virtual. It is utterly unique, and you know, and that's part of the reason why it's gained so much attention already, and the audience as well. You know, for a sim race or for a 24 hours Le Mans, there'll be hundreds of millions of people watching this over the weekend. Literally hundreds of millions, because it is free everywhere.
So Yuyovsky is back in the pits now, and with only 2 minutes remaining will not set another lap time, so he cannot challenge those 3 Porsches ahead. Josh Rogers again on a better lap. Mitchell de Jong looks like he's on a good lap too by looking at the purple sector 1 that he's got on his timing screen, but I can tell you Josh Rogers has gone faster than him, although de Jong is halfway further round the lap. Enzo Benito's first lap has put him in 7th position, which is the best of the Ferraris, but on his second lap he won't be as fast. Loads more improvements coming in here with only 1.5 minutes left.
However, there are, as you say, it's 1 minute and 20 left. There are cars on outlaps. Why?
Yeah.
Why? You're
Depends where they are. They might still be able to start that lap before the counter goes to 0.
Yeah, some of them have just completed sector 1. It's 13.6 kilometres. They're not getting around there. So they're either realised they're not going to get another lap and are trying something different, or like in the real world, you look at a team and you go, why have you made that decision? Why would you do that?
Are they giving a tow to another car,
was going to
for
say
example?
that.
Like, you know, they would say, well, what, you can pick up a tow heading down to the Porsche curves or something like that, or down towards Indianapolis. So that could be the case, or they might have changed something to the car, Lewis, and they go, you know, let's go and give it another go, for example.
Yeah, it could just be an innocent mistake, but I don't think we see innocent mistakes that much at this kind of level, because it's the tippy top of sim racing. It's so much work has gone into it. That lap from Rogers at the moment, by the way.
Yeah, he's astonishing. What we haven't seen so far is anybody towing anybody, which is maybe a little bit of surprise. Specifically in the rule book, bump drafting has been forbidden, so that's clearly an e-sport trick that is not being allowed in the real world. Watching Mitchell de Jong, purple sectors for him, but further back on the racetrack, about a minute behind him, Josh Rogers is going quicker. So de Jong goes top of the pile now, 1:47.182, checkered flag is out, he is done, and only Josh Rogers, messing up the Porsche curves, can take pole away from the 93, and it's a big slide in the Ford chicane. Now, normally that would cost you 1/10 of a second, not quite the same effect here. He runs out wide, comes to the line, and it is pole for the Porsche Super Cup eSport champion Josh Rogers. His season isn't going so well in the esports this year, but the reigning champion takes pole. Mitchell de Jong is second. Kevin van Doren goes third for Dempsey Proton in their 88 car. And so it is Porsche 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the moment, because Jeremy Bouteloup is fourth fastest, and the 94 Porsche has gone fifth quickest. That's another of the Porsche eSport teams, and that is David Williams, the British driver. So top 5 cars, all Porsche 911 RSRs. And that is potentially a problem for all their rivals, because, guys, that means they've got speed everywhere. Or does it mean they've got speed everywhere, running on fumes and on fresh tyres?
But exactly. The thing is as much as you can be the fastest car in qualifying, as we see Yordis Viers come across the line, improves lap time, and I think he's in 12th position. A bit of a disappointment for Ferrari there, I'm sure, but this is the thing. You can start from 12th place. It's 24 hours. It's a long race. They can still win it from there. And just because your car is quick in qualifying, you could be doing a lap less in the race. Your race tyres you could absolutely destroy the tyres. Because the thing is, in R Factor 2, as much as like wear percentage, or however you want to say it, like tread per se, or however on the tyres, it's thermal degradation that's the big thing here. That is the monster. And coming through the Porsche curves, you'll see the sim drivers sliding it about and really pushing the limit of the car. And that is, well, not so great for tyres.
Well, again, we get into the area of where they're going to maybe try and double stint tyres in the cool of the evening, through the nighttime hours, when the track temperature drops, the air temperature drops. Is there mileage in double stinting there that there isn't in the day? How long can they run a soft? Dare you double stint a soft compared to a medium? There's all sorts of questions, and they will have rehearsed all of those different opportunities. And one of the things that you can do is test somewhere other than Le Mans, because of course I was talking to Mario Andretti earlier talking about this. He said the great thing about sim racing is I can race at Indy in the morning and Monaco at lunchtime and Bathurst in the afternoon. You can take the car anywhere, literally. With a few strokes of the keyboard, you go, okay, I'm quitting out of Le Mans, I'm going to go and do some high-speed running at Indianapolis and just run flat out and do fuel figures. And you can go to any track you like to try and test any element of the car. And that's something, again, that real-world teams can't do, that you can do here. You can do a dozen different things in an afternoon.
That was a good end of the lap to Lee Sorensen, who's put the Aston Martin up into 5th position. However, he then stopped on the start-finishing line. You need to get your car to the pit lane. You cannot just escape out the game. That is not something necessarily that sits in a rule book of a sim driver, and that may have just cost him the chance of staying on that third row of the grid.
Well, Lasse is the younger brother of Marco Sorensen, who's been about in motorsport and stuff, so I'm sure he knows something. And he has been about in sim racing for, oh goodness knows how long. He was on the scene before even I joined it back in 2013, so he's been in the game for a long time. A critical mistake.
Yeah, because in the rules that they were sent today, it did say you may not quit out of qualifying. They were also watching corner cutting track limits, not just during the fast lap, but also if you straight line the forward chicane to get a good run up, bowling off a long length, then they'll delete your lap as well. And when it's a long lap like this, when it takes you the best part of 4 minutes to get round and there's only 20 minutes, losing a lap is not just losing the time, it's losing about a quarter of qualifying. So let's take a look at how they line up at the moment. Porsche looking very strong with Dempsey Proton, who normally race in the AM class, with their Pro class lineup here in row 2 of the grid, separating the 3 Porsche eSports cars. Best Aston Martin, the 95 car, in 5th position. And the best of the Corvettes was the Romain Grosjean Racing R8 team. So they've had a good run as well. Corvette Racing running their pro drivers. Maybe they just felt that they needed more time in the car. And Aston Martin Racing as well, with Ross Gunn in the 98 car doing their time. So again, maybe they just wanted him to have a little more time in the car, Ben.
Martin, you talk about Corvette Racing using their pro drivers. Nicky Katzberg, only a couple of tenths points off Erhan Yuyovsky. Katzberg, a real-world driver. Yuyovsky, a sim expert. That's incredibly impressive, especially as last night he was doing something completely different until 3 in the morning on a different platform.
Yeah, exactly. He was racing the final race of the IMSA series in a BMW, which is the dominant force there. So he's got to change. First of all, he's got to wake up and get ready and everything else. So luckily this is the evening as well, but he's got to get his head around the different cars. And guys, we talked about some of these guys. Nicky Katzberg's one, Esteban Guerrieri, who's a touring car driver in the real world, who has been not only matching the touring car racing pros, but racing everything else equally quickly. And of course, we've got your Lando Norris's, we've got your Max Verstappen's, your Charles Leclerc, who can go truck racing or lawnmower racing or Formula One or historics, or, you know, they, again, you know, the old adage from back in the 60s, if you're quick in anything, it sort of almost translates into the sim world as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got the likes of Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button here, of course. Those we've seen it in previous weeks elsewhere, that they've done great things in simulator stuff. They've come here, and to be fair, as far as my knowledge is, they've been on the same kind of servers, like practicing away from elsewhere. They've not been working together. They're in two very different teams, but they've been able to see the times each other's setting. And I know that they are almost as quick as the proper sim guys in their teams, and the sim guys they've got are quick ones as well. So it's very impressive.
Of course, one of the things that the sim world has that the real world has to have is a race director. There in the right-hand seat, Eduardo Freitas. He's the race director of the World Endurance Championship. He's the race director at Le Mans. Lisa Weishart on his right-hand side is his technical right arm. And these two are the key to bringing the real world, along with Ben from Motorsport Games, who is looking at it from a sim racing point of view. These two guys have been responsible for massaging the sim racing and the real racing world rules to bring them together, so everybody understands the rule book. For the real racing drivers, there are a few changes, but Chris, for the sim racing drivers, there are a few changes as well. So part of being a pro is being able to adapt quickly to all these different changes that are thrown at you, and that's what everybody's having to do.
Yeah, well, you know, just like how the professional drivers are working with the sim drivers, you know, Ben, who does this for the Le Mans Esports Series, is working with Eduardo there. They would have done exactly the same with the rule books, almost just merge them together, you know, get rid of anything that's, you know, anything that doesn't have any crossover, and then there is a pretty good rule book there that everyone is going to be able to understand. And you know, the sim drivers are going to help the professional drivers get their heads around it, and likewise the professional drivers will be helping the sim drivers get their heads around it as well. So very quickly it's all come together, and I think all the drivers are now on the same page.
Well, I think hopefully all the drivers are on the same page. This is Simon Pagenaud racing at home. So, he's got the lazy boy in the background, so that's where he'll be just getting ready to go in. A few handy trophies, Indy 500 winner, you know, all that kind of stuff there. And Pagenaud getting ready to come up to speed, ready for the prototype qualifying. Now, of course, everybody in GT is in different cars, depending on which model of car they've chosen, Ben. But everybody in the prototypes is in one LMP2 car. So even the Toyota drivers, there's no hybrid boost to worry about, there's none of that. They're in the same kit. Now, every racing driver ever always says, I just want to have the same as everybody else. What they really mean is, I just want to have the same as everybody else, but mine needs to be faster.
And the LMP2 car is exactly the same, not even a difference in tyres like we may see at Le Mans. These are 30 of exactly the same cars. And we've got these onboard cameras for every single one of our drivers, incredibly key for two reasons. For our enjoyment, to be able to see the driver's concentration, gestures, faces, but also it's used by the regulations to make sure that the right person is in the right car, and they have to register their location so that they drive from that location and that IP address so that nobody can pretend to be somebody else.
And of course the other thing, so in most of these sim rigs, either you've got a huge curving screen or you'll have a 3-screen setup. Often they'll have another screen above that has got the data from the game. They'll also have their own keyboard for setting up the game. They'll have their own button panel down beside them. They have to have a Skype connection on at all times. They're on Discord, which is, for those who don't do sim racing, is a a little bit like WhatsApp but for voice, and Race Control have the Discord channel they'll listen to. They'll be on TeamSpeak as well, so that they've got their team talking to them, the engineer can talk to them. The driver who's waiting to get in says, no, I want wets. Don't put slicks on, because the driver getting out of the car has to select the tyre for a tyre change. So they've got 3 or 4 different audio channels, screens like it's, you know, Mission Control in Houston, and voices coming in left, right and centre. And for the real world racers and for the sim racers, there's more going on than they're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is some sim drivers have a very specific approach to it. You know, it seems like I'm sure real drivers obviously do. Jenson Button, I think he had to climb in, always had to climb in from the left-hand side of his car.
Yeah.
There are so many different things as we start LMP2 qualifying that these sim drivers are used to. Like me, for example, I am not good. If anyone's in my ear, no way.
Yeah.
No, I don't like it. I know that obviously very much from the sim driver's point of view, they've got very specific setups. Like some of them might only have a single screen running at God knows what, like 60 frames per second. Some of them might have it 144. Some of them might even more than that. So there's so many unique differences.
And one of the things about this, of course, is that so many people are stuck in their own homes because of travel restrictions and everything else, but they would want their own rig anyway, because, Chris, they've spent days, weeks, months, sometimes years building up the various components, tailor-making them exactly to how they want them, exactly as a racing driver will do in his own race car. And so you don't want to be sharing one with somebody else. You know, I'm 6'6", you're 5'10", that doesn't fit. So somebody's got to have a seat insert, or you've got to have a movable seat. If you're sharing a rig, it's not specifically tailored for you. And so a lot of them would prefer to be in their own house, in their own rig, because that's what works best.
It's like, the best example I can give you, it's like jumping in a hire car, for example, and you jump in it and everything isn't in the same place that it used to be, and it can take you, one drive or 2 to get used to it. It's exactly the same like that. I've commentated on events where all the rigs are in a venue, like we are here, and when the drivers turn up, everyone's saying to me, well, it's just down to who can adjust the best, really, because we're not all going to be maybe as quick as we usually are. So it's going to be who can get in that rig and get used to it the quickest.
And that might be one of the issues for the guys in Maranello, because they are sharing a rig with some other drivers, and so they may not have an absolutely ideal setup. In a way, it's kind of like sending Usain Bolt into the 100 meters final with somebody else's shoes. You know, that's a tough argument, and I don't want to have that. Riding on board on our outlap with Team Penske now. Team Penske, Roger Penske's love of racing at Le Mans and his will to bring teams back hopefully will soon be realised as we have convergence between ACO and IMSA regulations. But for now, a unique opportunity to have Team Penske racing here at Le Mans. And, you know, it's a huge sports car racing dynasty, huge IndyCar racing dynasty. They've been so successful at everything. But, Ben, they've got a unique, almost unique approach in that the maximum we're allowed in a team of 4 is 2 pro sim racers. The maximum Penske have hired is 0.
Yeah, and I'm still a little confused as to why they've done that. Obviously, we've seen Simon Pagenaud incredibly fast in the IndyCar series, and I think he did a guest drive in a couple of other things as well. Juan Pablo Montoya has had a lot of experience. In fact, he's part owner in a sim company, and therefore he's getting lots more experience. But again, not he's actually got more experience on R-Factor 2 as a platform than Simon Pagenaud. Less known for me about Dane Cameron and Ricky Taylor and how they perform on the sims. But we are about to get ourselves warmed up and into this first opportunity of a lap. A couple of drivers already going into pit lane. But I think, number one, finding a bit of space is going to be key because it looks very congested, Chris. And number 2, a slipstream surely is going to be of an effect here in the LMP2 category.
Yeah, definitely. You know, they've got to try and get themselves in a good position here to get that slipstream, but also not get caught in traffic. So this is something the guys are going to be very used to doing. It's something that they have had the experience of doing several times, and we can see here on board with the United Autosports car, it looks like they've got a nice bit of clean space ahead of them. So no one to get in the way of them. You know, the only risk about trying to get a tow is if that car ahead of you makes a mistake, then it's going to ruin your lap as well. So that is the risk you take with trying to get a tow. However, the benefit from it could outweigh that sometimes.
Well, we just jumped, Ben, there, didn't we, directly from one all-pro racer team to the other all-pro racer team, which is United. They've got Jaap van Uyten, Tom Gamble joining Alex Brundle and Felipe Albuquerque. So all pro racers and not all pro sim racers, or any pro sim racers.
But we have seen quite a bit of starring performances from Albuquerque and Van Uyten in sim racing at the very highest level.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't, like, just because we're saying all the proper sim drivers are here, don't rule out the pro drivers, because they can definitely take part. To your point earlier, Ben, with them all following each other, and you can see this line here where you've got the United Autosports at the front, Alex Brundle behind the wheel of that one. Things are pretty tight. You've got to watch out, because we were having a conversation with Rory McDuff, who's driving the 2Cs car. I think Devin Bronner is the one who's qualifying that one at the moment, and he was saying in the test race that he was following someone, and going into Indianapolis, there was so much more dirty air than he expected, and dirty air is in this. Like, it is a thing, very much a part of this. And he said, wildly experienced LMP2 driver in this sim, in this car, went into the corner and went, wow, I did not expect that. And he had a monster crash.
Yeah.
So they've got to be careful with following each other too close.
Well, you know, we're kind of back to Mercedes at Le Mans in the 90s or the early 2000s, aren't we, where cars started aviating and the team told the drivers, if you are following closely to somebody, do not pull out of the wake, because that's, you know, like with water, there is a wake, and if you ride up the wake, then you take off. So, you know, they will have to be careful about that. But, again, if you're in a multiple car team, Veloce Esports have 3 cars, Williams have 3 cars, Jota have a couple with Team Redline, they've paired up with Team Redline. You have the opportunity, potentially, to try and slipstream one towing the other, but then you sacrifice guaranteed one car's lap, and the chances are they're only going to get 2, which means that you have to be very good at swapping over on the second lap for the first tower to actually have a tow himself. So I think clear air is what most drivers would prefer, because, Chris, you're not being hindered by anybody too close in front of you.
Yeah, they might all be Veloce coloured car, but they are 3 different teams, you know, and those 3 sets of 4 drivers want to win the race as much as anyone else. So when you're being told, no, you've got to go and give that guy a tow, well, why should I? This is a one-off opportunity. This is the 24-hour of Le Mans Virtual. It could be the only time this ever happens. There's only going to be one winner at the end of it, and, you know, getting off to a good start is going to be a good result in qualifying.
Fastest first sector at the moment from the number 13 Rebellion Williams car. Fastest sector 2 from the number 1 Williams Rebellion car. And the fastest third sector is from the fastest car at the moment. That's the number 18 Veloce Esports 3 car. So obviously some of the names really chip off the tongue, but you know, the cars are all the same. It's all the Oreca 07 chassis, so the basic platform is the same, the engine is the same, the tyre is the same. So it's you know, a spec category, but there is so much that you can develop. Everything you can change on the real world car, you can change on this car to the infinite detail.
And just to give you a taster of how epic this LMP2 battle is going to be, the top 6 cars at the moment separated by 1.5. Make that another one in there. 1.5 seconds separating the 6, but now it's gone to 1 second separating 8 cars. Siggy was just a couple of thousandths of a second ahead of Wisniewski, but Simoncic, who's been really starring during this lockdown period, now on provisional pole for Bajkoles of all people.
Yeah.
The thing is with Jene Simoncic, Kevin Siggy's he's Austro-Slovenian. Jene Simoncic is full Slovenian. Those two, 1-2, not really race with each other too much. So this, from like the sim racing point of view, is a crazy, like, this is a one-off for us sim racers, is seeing these big boys in sim racing taking part with each other, and this is something that I've never seen before my time. Jene Simoncic, Kevin Siggy, Nikodem Wisniewski, these are all top flight drivers in sim racing. Kevin Siggy won the McLaren Shadow Project. now drives for Team Redline as well, so he's alongside the likes of Rudy Van Buren, the very first world's fastest gamer. James Baldwin up there, recent world's fastest gamer. These guys are so ridiculously fast. I am very surprised with that time from Jerne Simoncic, half a second clear of the Jutta Team Redline.
And that is impressive, because as Ben was just starting to say before he pops the top, the next 6 cars are covered by 15 hundredths of a second, by 0.15 of a second. So they are losing to each other less than 100th of a second per kilometre around this track. That's absolutely insane, and it is as close as the real world can get as well. So we're riding on board now with the Bicolles car, or the Bicolles Burst eSport car. So Tom Dillman and Esteban Guerrieri, and again, you know, the pro driver lineup in there is absolutely impeccable, and they're drivers that would never race together, never mind race together at Le Mans. You'd never get Tom Dillman, top single-seater race, Esteban Guerrieri, top touring car race. Guerrieri's done loads of single-seater racing, but not in the last 7 or 8 years, so they'd never be in the same place together either. So you're saying, you know, you wouldn't get these sim races in the same category, never mind on the same grid, and it's the same with the real-world drivers. You know, you can look at the real-world drivers, and of the 55 or 6 real-world drivers, or 106, whatever, you can go, well, we'd never see him with him, with him, with him. You take 3/4 of them away and say, they might all be at Le Mans together, the rest wouldn't be in it.
It's every pub chat anyone's ever had, isn't it,
yeah.
in motorsport? In the sim world as well, though, you know, as Lewis says, this is what would happen if all of these guys raced against each other. That's exactly the same with the professionals. What happened if, you know, all these drivers, we put them in exactly the same car, you know, on the same tyres at the same time? Who would come out on top? We're about to find out the answer, basically.
It is massive bragging rights. You said that earlier, isn't it? You know, this is winner takes all. This isn't the first round or the last round of a championship. Everybody comes in here with nothing, and almost everybody's going to go away with nothing. So 6 teams are going to be happy, and what does that leave? 44 teams are going to be unhappy for one reason or another. So Lewis, yeah, it will settle. It'll settle a lot of arguments, and it'll start far more than it ever was going to settle.
Absolutely. One driver who has been in sim racing a very long time, Jack Keithley's gone up to the top, to second place in the Rebellion Williams Esports. As much as Williams Esports, this is one thing that actually we haven't really covered, and we haven't even spoke about it throughout this week, is as much as the, say the Williams Esports, great example of this. They've got 3 cars in this. So if we take the top 2 of their cars, the 03 and the 01, Jack Keithley, Nikodem Wisniewski, they're teammates, right? They've worked with each other for ages. No. Nikodem Wisniewski, they've both been part of Williams for over a year now. It's about 1.5 years, nearly 2 years, those two have been part of that team. However, they have not raced together or against each other. This is their big time. The thing is with those two, Jack Keithley races on one thing, Nikodem Wisniewski races on another thing. They don't really race against each other that much. And that's sort of like, that's an example, of course. There are plenty of those throughout the grid where there are some drivers who have, you're my teammate. I don't know who you are. I've never raced with you before.
And Keithley showing amazing form on all sorts of different platforms.
Yes, I'm just about to talk to a 24 Hours of Le Mans legend. Yes, Jackie Ickx is going to be talking with us. He has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans 6 times. Firstly, Jackie, 24 Hours of Le Mans virtual. What are your thoughts on this legendary race going virtual?
Well, my thoughts are these special circumstances we have today are also opening a new world for motor racing, and clearly it has been done before, but it's the first time for the 24 hours, and I must admit that I am amazed by the precision of what I see, the cars, the way they are driven, the competition, and it's a good opportunity to live the time we are living right now. Virtual possibilities, the technique is there. I think we are living an incredible moment, and it's going to be an hell of an effort for those who will stay 24 hours behind their simulator, and it's very exciting, really.
Thank you very much, Jackie. I think, yes, it is going to be one hell of a drive for those on their sims. Thank you very much.
Not long left.
Thanks to you.
Not long left of the session now, just 6 minutes remaining, and most of the drivers have been into the pits, as we saw in GTE. and now coming out for a second attempt, a 3:23.683, the time to beat from Simonjic, with Keithley, Ziggy, Wisniewski, James Baldwin, all sim drivers, the best of our real-world drivers. Stoffel Vandoorne in 7th position, who recently, of course, won the Formula E Race at Home Challenge, which was on rFactor 2.
Yeah, he's really getting used to it up there as well. You've got Devin Brawner, who's recently come out of another championship in rFactor 2, having pole at this track. It was quite a bit slower than this, and that is for a very few sort of like specific reasons. We are running ABS in this, and it's to make things like a little bit more comfortable for the pro drivers, for the sim drivers as well. Does make the car a lot quicker though, because you can go into Indianapolis and brake way later than you thought you could, because you don't have to worry about the instability of the car. It's still a little bit, it can catch you out, but with the ABS on, you can really, really attack the braking zones.
Yeah, a lot of the pro drivers are finding that the back end of the LMP2 car is a little bit on the wayward side when the sim racers set it up the way they want for ultimate speed. They like it Schumacher style, very pointy on the nose, and they're happy to deal with the rear end. This is the 08 Toyota Gazoo Racing entry, and this car is currently where on the timing
29th,
screens?
not set a time yet.
Yeah, hasn't set a time yet. Just on strategy, Jack Keithley has just come into the pits with 4.5 minutes left to go, so he has just got time to get out, get round, and start a lap within a few seconds. But he was sort of out of sync with everybody else, who's already almost getting round to start their quick laps.
Yuri Kasdorp comes to the line, a very, very healthy sim racer representing Toyota Gazoo Racing here, our only works manufacturer in LMP1, and has slotted himself into 12th position.
Yeah.
So that's the best of the Toyota Gazoo Racing drivers, but I'm a bit worried about them when they have to get all 4 drivers into the cars, because they're real-world drivers taking part in this really don't have that depth of experience, Chris, that a lot of the other guys do.
Yeah, Yuri Kasdorp, he'd probably be up there within the top 10 sim drivers out there, like you said, but he's got to carry 3 other drivers along with him, because between Buemi, Hartley and Yamashita, there isn't a lot of sim racing experience, so he's going to be in there for the maximum amount of time as possible, which is 7 hours. Toyota Gazoo Racing, they brought all their drivers along with them for this, but as you said, they haven't really got a lot of sim racing experience, with the exception of Lopez, who has done a lot of sim racing over the last few years.
Of course, they're dotted all over the place. Mike Conway is in the UK, Kamui Kobayashi in Japan, Jose Maria Lopez is in Europe as well, isn't he? And their 4th driver, Maxime Briand, he's in France. But Mike Conway in the 7 car for Toyota has got almost no sim racing experience whatsoever. So he's going to be the proper gentleman driver in that car.
I was just going to say, from what we see on screen, if a racing driver didn't want people to see their reactions live around a lap without a crash helmet on, that is why. Because as you can see on board there, racing drivers are finding out exactly what they look like on a lap without their crash helmets on.
I love that. I love having the onboard cameras on real-world cars, but I really love having the onboard cameras to see that the frustration, the anger, the kind of getting to grips with a car through different corners. You almost see the face tense up as they get to some of the harder corners, like the braking points in Indianapolis and Mulsanne. It's really fantastic to see.
Well, you could also see when we were watching Yuri a little earlier, you know, where he's sitting in his room. You can almost check out what's on the bookshelf. You know, we've seen Simon Pagenaud with all the trophies, the Indy 500 winners trophy and everything else. Yuri's got, what's on the bookshelf? You know, where's the model cars and all the various bits and pieces. And, you know, lots of drivers, particularly in the real world, have, you know, a man cave with their trophies and model cars and stuff. That's where their sim rig will be. Yeah, it's my office, dear. But the pro sim racers, it's a much more business-like environment because it's where they work. Whereas for a lot of the racing drivers, up until the COVID crisis, it's just been where they went for a bit of fun. Now it's a whole different environment, of course.
Yes, that's their cockpit. That is what they are used to. And for the professional drivers, when they jump into that kind of environment, it's not going to feel right. And having to be in that environment, concentrating over 24 hours is going to be very difficult. But when you bring Yuri Kasdorp perhaps to a live event, that's when it's going to feel a little bit different for him when he's on stage and there's loads of lights on him. So, but, you know, at his home, that is exactly what he's comfortable with.
That's a very key point, actually. There are sort of stadium racers who are comfortable in that environment, and then there are other people who are much happier being at home. We've been following Simonjic through this lap. The first sector was the best he was able to do, but he's just lost a couple of thousandths of a second in the second sector, and he's just caught the traffic in the very wrong place, because about to come to the Porsche curves, which ultimately is only really one line, he might pick up a bit of slipstream. Traffic gets out the way for Simonjic, but look at that. He could improve this time by nearly 2.5 tenths of a second and pull himself even further away from Braun, who has now got himself up into second position. But Keithley will be one of the last drivers to start a lap, so we'll have to keep an eye on to the very end to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, Devin going up into second position for 2Cs Motorsport. That is a strong team. We've eyeballed that one. Ollie Rowland a part of that one. Looked incredibly quick, their lead pro driver. Fantastic stuff. Up in the second position at the moment. Jane Simonjic to the line. Is it going to be an improvement, though?
Yeah, Simonjic absolutely monstering those final curves. Fastest final sector, and he opens up a big advantage, because Brauner was 11 hundredths behind, now 42 hundredths behind. So he did find 3 tenths. Checkered flag is out. Did Jack Keithley start a lap? That's the question. I think he might have done. So, whoa! Now, that's one of the cars that's been driven in this. Is that the Senior Tech car? No, it's not, is it?
42, I think that I saw.
Yeah, 42. Cool Racing. They've changed their livery as well. So, we have 2 cars racing here in the studio with us, TDS and IDEC. And both their starting drivers will be starting the race in the studio with us. So, that's going to be fun tomorrow. E-Team WRT racing at Le Mans for the first time ever. They've been huge in GT3 racing. They race in DTM, but WRT has never raced at Le Mans before.
He's done 2 personal bests on this lap, so it could be a good one.
Arna's looking good. Arna Schoenfleet there behind the wheel of that. The Belgian towards the line, up into second position. Very impressive.
I've commentated on him racing in Porsches in the Super Cup. He raced in the Super Cup, but what other experience has he got? Has he done Le Mans before? Has he done prototype racing before as well? Presumably so, yeah.
Yeah, and he's won at that level as well. So he's a very experienced driver, and he's one of the drivers you put right up there within the top 5 perhaps sim racers out there at the moment.
Well, Simonjic still fastest by 2200, but Keithley, purple sector 2. So here we go. Let's see if Jack Keithley for Rebellion Williams can put them on the front row, or whether he can go faster again.
Sector 1's not good, though.
Yeah, he lost 4 tenths of a second in Sector 1, didn't improve, so he needs to take a huge amount of time in Sectors 2 and 3 to make this count.
Yeah, he may just not have got the end of his outlap correct, may not have had the right heat in the tyres. Headlights flashing. This is the quick lap that might count, and it's exactly the same as the real world. Cars slowing down, cars on their in lap, maybe not quite as alert to the fact that you've got somebody coming steaming up behind you on a mega lap.
I don't know, I think this is, I don't know which one it is. It's Dennis Jordan that's behind the wheel of that one. Obviously teammates with Alex Siebel and Guido van der Garde as well. Absolutely sliding it through. He's driven this car a lot. He's driven this car around this circuit a lot. He has raced an awful lot recently. He hasn't raced this car for about a year, but you know, he's still got that memory. This team, watch out for them in the race. Masters of strategy. They are incredibly on it when it comes to the numbers, and they will pump them out hour after hour after hour.
So here he is then, coming towards the line. Jack Keithley with the best middle sector of anybody, but gave away some time in the first sector. Throws the car over the Ford chicane, desperately trying to eke every mile an hour out of the car to the line. Is it pole position for Williams? No, it's not.
No improvement.
No improvement. That's a shame for him. So he remains on row 2 of our grid in 4th position. 2Cs Motorsport just ahead of him by 1/10 of a second. And then the front row starting on the outside front row, E-Team WRT, and so far on pole position with nobody else setting the timing screws ablaze. It looks as though pole position has absolutely been sealed by Coles Burst Esport. Wow, so that's some pretty impressive driving by their pole-winning driver. There you go, look at that. He's enjoying it,
isn't he?
There's Jack Keithley. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well, Ooh, exactly. Blows out his cheeks as he crosses the line, checks the time, and as in the real car, you know where your split is. He knows that he gave it away early on in the lap, Chris, and then he just had to rag the living daylights out of the car.
But just like in the real life, if you have a bad first sector, you might overdrive the second and the third. It's exactly the same with this. But fourth place, you've got a very, very good chance from there. You've got a good chance to build your strategy around yourself. You're not going to be in traffic at the start, so you can plan your strategy right now, starting from that position.
Well, let's look a little further down our timing screen. 17th and 18th. Car 8 and Car 7, the two Toyota Gazoo Racing Team cars, both driven by their Sim Pros, and yet they are, down almost at the bottom of the top 20. Is that a surprise to us, or are they playing a longer game?
I wouldn't say so. No.
Okay.
Not for me. I don't know about Lewis, but I wouldn't say it's a surprise to see them down that low. It might be a surprise to see some of the drivers that may have gone out there for them, but this is the difference between the professionals and the sim racing drivers, and this exactly why we have almost described it as a pro-am class, but flip it the other way around to what you're used to, because that is the difference between what these guys can do at the top. I mean, Stoffel Van Dorn, like Ben says, he's done very well. He won the Formula E Race at Home Challenge, and right from when we had the start of lockdown, he was doing very, very quick times in sim racing. So it's no surprise to see him where he is.
And Ben Stoffel is the best of the real-world drivers. He's qualified that car 6th fastest, which is an epic lap. Next best of the real-world drivers is IDEC Sports' Franco Colapinto, who is, I've just lost him now on the timing screen, who is in 16th place.
Behind Mike Epps, who has raced in the British Touring Car Championship.
Yeah.
So, but he's one of those like half-half. Is he a sim driver? Is he a real driver? He's very, very good at both.
Yeah, but he's a pro sim racer, so he definitely falls into the pro sim category.
Is he a SR on our entry list?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Then.
Yeah.
That's how we differentiate here at Le Mans 24 Hours.
Exactly right.
SR or PR?
Yes.
So, Bicolors have pole. Phrases you never thought you'd say about qualifying at Le Mans. With no disrespect to the Bicolors team, they haven't had that pace in the car and that pace in the driver lineup that they've produced out of qualifying. So there's all sorts of new names for us to talk about, new drivers for us to talk about, new teams for us to talk about. Some of the headline teams, FARB, Fernando Alonso, Rubens Barrichello's team, they won the first test race. They've qualified down in 13th. Is that a shock? Should they be higher up the grid?
That is a shock, because Jarl, who's behind the wheel of that car, he races, he races in the pro stuff over in iRacing on the oval side of things for eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series. Sure, fine, that's all well and good. But he is honestly, in R-Factor 2, an incredible driver. Races on equipment that's nowhere near as good as, say, for example, like Mike Epps. He races on a Logitech G29, not a direct drive wheel, and yet he is normally up there. I am very surprised he is a second off the pace.
Well, Ben, qualifying is done. So that's pretty much it. All we've got to do is race for 24 hours through the night and into Sunday afternoon. So if anybody's watching us online, you can join us again tomorrow. We will be back 30 minutes before the start of the Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual. We have a whole bunch of guests online and in the studio, and our two starting drives for IDEC Sport and for the Cinetec Alpine Elf team will be here in the studio starting the race. Join us then. We have a fantastic 24-hour virtual Le Mans race coming up for Saturday and Sunday.
4, 3, 2, 1.